Thank you. And on behalf of the Manav Rachna Fraternity, ASSOCHAM, and our event partners, I heartily welcome all the eminent panelists for the second session of Education Leaders Summit on the topic International Collaborations for Building Future Ready Youth, a Global Perspective. You all are aware about each one of them. I need not make any introductions because your introductions are very elaborate. Dr. Ashwin, Mr. Narayanan, Mr. Venkatesh, Dr. Amrendra, thank you very much for joining for this session. It is a very important topic, and it has a lot of value in today's times. As you are all aware, international collaborations are the bridges which connect islands of knowledge in today's education world. The accelerated advent of education technology platforms, real-time connectivity, and globalization of the education has enabled any student, even in the remotest part of the world, to access world-class international education. Never before has knowledge from reputed world-class institutions, may it be Ivy League universities or top-of-the-line research facilities, been more affordable and easily available. Our students today need not only be ready for industry, business, or entrepreneurship in India, but they should also easily be able to work, adjust, and perform exceedingly well in any part of the world. It is for this reason that the role of international collaborations in making a student future fit for any global task or opportunity gains importance. We will commence today's session by seeking your thoughts on the topic sequentially. I will now request Mr. Narayanan to give his perspective on the topic at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us this opportunity, and thanks, ASSOCHAM, for inviting me here. Obviously, like you said, Colonel, this is an absolutely relevant topic, one that is perhaps the most important discussion that we should be having, not just here, but across various corridors. And that the reason is, this is the time where the world needs us. Never before in the history of this world that an entire, a set of countries were looking up to one or two countries for their requirement in terms of manpower, labor, and related areas. A survey says by 2030, 1/3 of the world's working age population will be from India. So I can't emphasize more the need for globe to look at India, and on the reverse, how India should be looking at serving the world. So I would think all those youngsters who are in their schools and maybe even in colleges should be expecting to be working outside India as well. So to that extent, the way I see it is, our youth are going to play a big global role. And we, unfortunately, are not a country that has been training people formally for global roles. I mean, 70-80% of our population is still unskilled, the workforce that we have. So there is a big task. On one side, the world needs us. On the other side, we are not used to that kind of formal training, formal education that the rest of the world recognizes. And the third thing that is equally important and in some sense concerning is the future of jobs. And hence the future of skill sets required for these jobs is changing dramatically. It is changing faster than ever before. So a combination of this, the world wanting us, and we not in a position to deliver that, plus the fact that the future of job roles is not even sure even for these countries, is one of those topics. So in each of these things, I'll spend a minute to explain my point. So if you look at the world, most of the countries is getting geriatric. We've had in the past the following agreements that these countries have come to India, right? Japan has signed the TITP program where about 1.4 million youths from India are going to be interning in Japan. And there is India International Skills Center that has been open since 2017, and more than 50,000 students have been trained on this. Singapore Temasek has come and actually set up institutions in India. UAE has signed up formally to look at Indian labor participating. We signed this agreement with UNESCO a couple of years before. Finland and Sweden, I need not tell you, Colonel, Sweden is looking up to India in a very big way. And we've seen formal requests by these countries. Maldives, Jordan, Lebanon, these are countries early on who had approached India and said, we want to work with Indian labor because they see the writing in the wall that today or tomorrow they need this Indian youth coming there. So why don't we train them there? But having said that, what is it that we need to do? We need to make sure that our programs, both the formal education programs and the vocational education programs, are set to transnational standards. How do we bring in our education system that will reflect the requirements of these countries so that along with Make in India, we also skill for the world? So to do this, in my view, where can we have these collaborations? There are a number of institutions. KPMG has worked with many of them, and I know for a fact firsthand that these institutions are willing, are waiting, are willing to do that, take that extra step to collaborate with India. And where can you collaborate? I'll just leave some thoughts there. Assessment is one big area. These assessment agencies there would like to know if the Indian youth are ready for some of the requirements there. The standards that are being set there, can we take some guidance from them in terms of how some international standards are set? Content creation is something that we need not reinvent the wheel. Training the trainers, we are woefully short of trainers in many of the skills, like in case of teachers, like how do we make sure that we take their help in doing that? Apart from that, internship and placements are other areas where collaborations with many of these institutions abroad, apart from the universities there, is going to be of big help. And while we are doing that, I think we should also look at future skills. It could be digital skills, it could be the emotional skills, or how do we survive in a global environment in terms of cultural adoption and other things. Put all these things together, I think there is a big opportunity for the Indian educational institutions, Indian training institutions to look at collaboration with many of these foreign entities who are willing to do that for the benefit of our own youth. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Narayanan, for this very deep and crisp perspective on this aspect of collaboration and how it will help our Indian youth. Grateful for your time and sorry for keeping you waiting.
Not at all, sir.
Yeah. So I'll now request Dr. Ashwin, who heads the QS operations for the complete country and for Southeast Asia, to please give his views on the topic at hand.
Thank you so much, Colonel Girish, and I would like to thank Dr. Prashant Balaji for the invitation, and ASSOCHAM as well for working towards having this event today. I think it's very crucial to discuss and deliberate over the topic, which is international collaborations for building future-ready youth, a global perspective. And I think this panel here, which we have here today, is a good mix of national, international perspectives, and I think already Narayanan has mentioned about how India is perceived on the global stage, and I would like to add some more thoughts there, which I think are so relevant to this topic. But first, I would like to share 3 global characteristics of the youth today, because that's important for us to learn what are the youth are and what are they expecting. The first is that young learners will continuously reinvent learning, and that has been seen throughout. Second is they aspire towards establishing a new global citizenship. And third, they are futuristic learners. So these are 3 important characteristics. I'll touch upon them very quickly and then I'll move ahead. When we look about the learners today, the first one is they continuously reinvent, because we've seen how global learners are busy adapting informal paths. They're pushing the boundaries from games to social media to VR platforms, and creating new platforms for learning today's youth. Even platforms like Coursera, Udemy, edX, which are seeking to displace classroom learning, and institutions which are trying to create online degree programs, we've seen how learners are making exceptional use of these platforms and integrating and involving platforms like WhatsApp, YouTube, to not only teach, learn, and convene learning communities, but also building their own income streams as they learn. So there are several forces which are driving this continuous disruption, and they include technology innovation, perhaps the need for open and free, or perhaps even inexpensive access to content, and ultimately the need to adapt to a swiftly changing local and global context. So for individuals and for the society, this strategy will provide a selective advantage over formal institutional learning, which we've seen for young learners is slower to adapt. So the first definitely is that they are reinventing themselves. The second is we've seen how youth are establishing a new global citizenship. And I think it is you can see that through the Greta Thunbergs and the other people who are really creating the wave around the world. So youth of today see the big picture in a way no other generation has seen before. They're globally aware. They're aspiring to build global brands for enterprises and themselves. Some feel a responsibility to use their skills and crafts to change the human story in ways which are large and small. So almost all of them recognize a pressing global scale problem that increasingly impacts our families, communities, and they aim to build future paths which they can express themselves in their own ways. And we will see how they will transform using phones, social media networks, and how new citizenship strategies will reinvent the traditional strategies in the coming years. The third is they are futuristic learners. Now, already I think it was pretty clear in the first two, but the youth today are learning not just from themselves, but for the future. They're learning for the sake of the next generation, and they're learning to embody a new vision of their country, whether it is the official vision of the country or the one they're probably working to give birth themselves. I think that's what the youth are today, and we can see that transformation happening. And I would not like to name any protests, but definitely we can see how the youth are changing and how future perspective and motivational, and they're thinking of flexing future thinking skills, building a totally new global aptitude in personal as well as a planet-wide foresight. So the youth are changing, and hence we need to have a future-ready policy which is focused on internationalization. So governments are investing, institutions are investing, and hence a robust and detailed skill development policy can be the stepping stone for this. So there are three areas I think which are important to consider, and I'll just focus on them very quickly. First is there should be a focus on globalization, which is driven by technology, very, very important. And it should focus on the knowledge economy. We can see how jobs are changing. Narayanan has already mentioned about how jobs are going to change, titles are changing, jobs are becoming enlarged, they're getting enriched. There are new flexible working arrangements and so on. So definitely employment demands are shifting towards higher skills. So it is imperative that that if the youth need to move up the ladder, the country needs to move up the ladder, we need to produce a large number of people with higher education and genetic training for new types of knowledge work, which could be high skills as well as technology-based skills as well. The second is promoting best practices, excellence, and global benchmarking. Now, I'm coming from a ranking agency, and I think it is important I say this, that quality assessment is a need of the hour, not just for institutions, but for countries to look at what is happening. I mean, let's look at Singapore in this matter, for this matter. In a span of 25 years, we've seen how institutions have become the epicenters of knowledge. And that's what institutions in India and in developing countries need to see, is adapting or adopting those best practices, how rankings could help spear competition, how they could support you in skill development, how you could adopt partnering with global institutions, bring them here and so on. So I think there is a great amount of work to be done on how rankings, ratings, accreditation, national level, both international level, can support in promoting excellence. And the third area, which I think is very important, is experimentation with innovation and research through international collaborations, which kind of encompasses of whatever I've said The culture of, we've already had the culture of jugaad in India, as we call them. So how do we get that into the system where people are innovating and sharing this internationally, collaborating with international institutions, industries, and educational institutions, which should be an ongoing activity. So there are three imperatives here. And let me finish with a study which I have, which I would like to quote you. And it's so important. And I think I would like to congratulate Manav Rachna University, the people behind who came up with this topic, because it is a need of the hour, not just to discuss, but also to have a path ahead. So why is it important? The study says that 50% of today's jobs, this was pre-COVID, require technology skills. And it also mentioned that it will increase to 77% in less than a decade. Now, that was pre-COVID. If you do the report today, I think we have already reached 77%, which is staggering and alarming. It's also said that by 2022, there will be 6.2 million job openings in cloud-based technologies. And perhaps with how EdTech and technology has overcome and empowered and changed the way we've looked at how we are using technology last year in COVID and now as well, that probably has already been accomplished at the moment. So I would like to conclude by saying empowering people with future-ready digital skills is a key priority for the world. And the nations that move fast, with universities that move faster, will be the winners in the coming age. So thank you so much. And I think that was crisp and to the point, Colonel Girish. So
thank you, Dr. Ashwin, for so lucidly, bringing about as to what are the characteristics of a future-ready person, and also giving us a insight into the future dimensions. Rightfully, you said the future is faster than we think. So I fully agree with you. I also foresee a very big role that you and QS can play in, creating how the technology now drives the education of the future-ready student. Thank you very much. I will now request Mr. Venkatesh. And Dr. Amrendra, please don't take me wrong. It is just that we all are sequentially taking it. I will come to your words of wisdom in just about 5-7 minutes.
Please.
Mr. Venkatesh to please apprise us about his views on this very important topic.
Thank you so much for having me in the forum. And as the earlier speakers have covered it in terms of some of the broad pointers of integration as well as collaboration, I would stress upon a little bit on the digital skills and the interventions what we need to have. From an NSDC perspective, I lead the Skill India Mission's digital interventions in terms of identifying partnerships which can further strengthen our access, digital content, skilling of people, at the same time even taking to the next level of assessments and globally recognized certifications. So I think in the last 1 year, India was moved to accelerate fast. It's been thrown into a territory where there was a lot of chaotic discomfort. At the same time, there was no clarity of how to run an ecosystem. Imagine India has 1.65 million schools. We have 4 times more schools than China has. Some of them believe that China has more schools, but India has 4 times more schools than China has. India has close to 44,000 higher education institutions, which offer degree programs. Now, the thing is, when suddenly pandemic hit us, when from 24th of March last year, when we went to lockdowns and then continued and extended lockdowns, there was a lot of discomfort because you really need to move the workloads. The biggest problem in India is institutions buy technology, but they don't use technology. So faculty have technology, but they never use technology. So I come from the corporate side of things before moving into NSDC. I worked for 20 years and 10 years predominantly, more than a decade I've spent at Microsoft. So, wherein we have seen that institutions and organizations buy technology, they have technology, but they don't use it because they're used to the physical ecosystems and the classrooms and defined formats of learning. Now, suddenly when we were thrown into an ecosystem where nothing was visible, the workloads were absolutely collapsed, the physical workloads, we had to move ourselves into the digital ecosystem. So, and that's where an opportunity of quickly figuring out how to use technology started happening from a K-12 teacher to a higher education faculty, to individuals, to parents, to individuals within families. Everybody started using technology, and suddenly there was a surge in the digital consumption when it comes to content. Digital skilling constitute of different parts: content, your access, tools which are there to connect you, and then of course if it is an education related stuff, there are certain assessments, grading and certifications. So at NSDC we took the advantage of our eSkill India portal, which was actually a portal which was built for this purpose of aggregating all the relevant four areas I mentioned, to provide a seamless and a fantastic platform for individuals to access technology using their mobile phones. The other advantage India has is we have more than 550 or 600 million phones in our ecosystem, mobile phones in our ecosystem, and they are connected. Thanks to Jio, we have the lowest broadband rates in the country, not across the developing countries. If you look into, we are the cheapest actually offering that kind of a price point. Now, the biggest challenge was getting in the content, getting in the relevant international players to partner with us. And that's where we ended up building partnerships with Khan Academy in developing national occupation standards and certain courses, partnerships with edX, Coursera, Udacity, things like even Sailor Academy. Most of them don't know about Sailor Academy. In Sailor Academy, not only they offer, it's a philanthropic institution which runs a very worldwide, one of the biggest digital platforms, wherein they not only offer content free of cost, but even certification is free of cost to benefit. So we brought in those very interesting partnerships, handpicked them, from different countries, from North America to your Europe to Scandinavian nations. We picked up some of the finest of the MOOCs. We picked up some of the finest of the content and rich companies which provide content. We also built partnerships with the global companies which are headquartered out of Seattle, let's say Microsoft. When Satya Nadella announced the global skilling initiative of COVID, of skilling close to 20 million or 15 million plus, India was the first country and NSDC was the first organization to partner with them and extend the digital skilling to 1 million people in a pilot format, youth as well as women. Similarly, a partnership with an AWS in the AWS Educate space, or we are now talking to Google, Sundar Pichai's extended team, which is working on next billion users. Bringing those interventions to India in terms of providing a YouTube platform for anything to do across all content segments. We cut across 37 sector skill councils, and there are 3,400 job roles which are mapped in India, not one or two. So how can YouTube give, be a collaborator and provide a platform along with NSDC so that all the content comes in there and people can access? I think the best way to relook into this ecosystem is identify the internationally relevant partners who can bring a lot of collaboration, institutional synergy, and identify what is required in India and try to map the areas and build a partnership, which is a win-win situation for both the organizations and countries at a large. So that's what we have done. We built in more than 30 plus strategic partnerships, and most of them are international in nature in the last 1 year. And we have delivered our metrics much better than the normal years. So sometimes challenges put us into situations wherein we start rethinking in a different direction to find a solution rather than the normal run of the mill. So disruption only happens when you're put in a challenging situation, not in your comfort situation wherein we are sitting and comfortably talking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Venkatesh. You brought out two very good things. One is that you gave us a deep insight into the fascinating work which you have done in the digital domain, which is really astounding. And that is going to be the backbone of education for the youth in India. And the second very apt thing which you mentioned is that when confronted with adverse situation is when we find alternate solutions, and which you rightfully found in this COVID scenario. So grateful for your talk to us, and I will now request Dr. Amrendra to please give us his views on the topic at hand.
So good afternoon, Colonel Girish, my fellow panelists, Dr. Rosni, Mr. Narayanan, and Mr. Venkatesh. It's a pleasure indeed to be in this panel and dealing with a very important discussion on future-ready universities and making our youth for getting the things done in future and giving good leadership to various areas. So first of all, I have 2-3 important points because I deal with policy research and I belong to an organization that is one of the apex bodies of higher education, and we are responsible for making policy research and providing research-based policy input to Minister of HRD. So therefore, my viewpoints will be largely focused on policies and internationalization and the role of universities. These three aspects I will be dealing with. And much has been said by my fellow panelists like Narayan Saab, and Venkatesh also has given very good points. And of course, Dr. Ashwini has thrown good light on several issues. And let me tell you two things. First of all, the nature of university, the concept of university, the generic concept of university has been misconstrued. And during the early stage, the universities were global institutions. And later, we made our universities as localized institutions. And the institutions, they were operationally defined with the local and regional spirit. And today, again, we are looking forward to go global. And because it's the era of globalization, so the vision, the objective of the universities needs to be redesigned, and we need to look at the things in a different perspective. Now, coming to two things, the taxonomy. What could be the taxonomy of a future university? This is the most important topic. See, for a large part of discussion, we have very less time. In fact, so I am just running a bit swiftly, but speedily. In fact, for a large part of time, we have been discussing about future-ready university, future skills, and all those things. Can somebody precisely tell me what should be the exact taxonomy of a future-ready university? Probably we are not sure and settled about this idea. What could be? Because reason being is that very particular point I am giving you. Today, thinking about the job skills, future job skills, that really makes me to think it's a moving target, right? When we are trying to shoot the target in one point, it is moving to other direction. Let me tell you, one engineering graduate today enrolled in an engineering institute or college is not sure and certain that the kind of curricula he is now studying, the kind of skills he is acquiring after 4 years, what kind of skill sets he will require, he is not sure and certain. So this is not settled exactly what would be the exact form and the exact requirement of the future university. Anyway, looking into the trend, the way we are going, the way global institutions are going, the way we feel the requirement today, I think we can only have some speculation, we can have some idea what could be the future ready skills. And to do that, in case of higher education institutions, because Narayanan spoke something different relating to skill also, Venkatesh also spoke, and Dr. Ashwini also spoke about quality and the other aspects. My point is related to higher education, teaching and research institutions. I need to say only three things: teaching collaboration, research collaboration, because we are dealing with, in this topic, we are dealing with collaboration, international collaboration for making future ready universities. I would like to speak only three areas of collaboration. Number one, teaching collaboration. The universities, they needs to upgrade their curriculum. We have been saying it for last several years and decades. And today, except our IITs, IIMs, and a few institutions only, the most of the curricular aspects of various institutions today in our country, they do not have adapted themselves up to the international orientation of the curriculum. That part needs to be taken good care of, and we must be serious about these things. Second thing, in teaching collaboration, we need to have, let me share one beautiful and most important point with you. In 90s, it was the Association of Indian Universities which took the first time the work of internationalization of higher education. And during that time, we called the meeting of the vice chancellors. And let me tell you, it has been mentioned in that proceedings that accepting the spirit of globalization will be a life and a death, question of life and death for the university. This has been stated. So till date also, our government tries to do many things, but they are not being translated into action. Now in the NEP, we are saying that we are going to invite 100 institutions to our country, but we do not see much regulatory reform in that respect. Practically, we are facing lots of programs. The same officers, same people, same policymakers, those who are sitting at government, those who are sitting at apex bodies like ours and UGC and other organizations also, we speak something different. But coming to the exact action, we do not achieve satisfactory result. This aspect needs to be bridged, that gap. some synchronization should be there with the policy and action. Teaching collaboration needs to be promoted, and teachers, faculty members from other countries must be allowed to come and work in our educational institutions. Then collaboration aspect will be enhanced, and teaching quality, pedagogy, everything will be improved, and we will have international orientation of the things. This is first thing. Second thing, research collaboration. See, the 21st century characterizes itself as the knowledge century. Knowledge revolution and applying the knowledge to the societal welfare and welfare of all the human beings. This is the most important aspect, and therefore research collaboration will be of a priority. And in research collaboration, let me give you a few data also. Data in approximate estimation, I can tell you there are research studies also that when the Indian authors, they collaborate with international authors in publishing the research work, the impact factor is high and the research quality is good. But when they do it in India, they do not get that much of publicity because of less impact factor and so many other things. So therefore, knowledge, teaching collaboration as well as research collaboration is the most important. And third thing is student exchange, faculty development program. In such matters, we need to have huge collaboration. For that, we need to build in-house capacity, and infrastructure facility will require. We need to attract international students for better international exposure among our students, and there should be assimilation of our cultures. And let me give you a data. Every year, our almost 8 lakh students, they go abroad, they study abroad in the US or any other developing countries. But in India, we only receive 46,000 in our institutions. So you imagine, this is our condition. If we go for international collaboration, we need to also look at to this aspect. And in-house capacity building is the most essential thing. We need to create international hostels. We need to create facilities for international students. We need to update curricula, as I have told you. Pedagogy must be updated. And the most important part, the assessment. There are some pressing need which has been felt to reform our examination system, assessment system. What we have been assessing is only the cognitive aspects. We need to assess the cognitive and the cognitive and psychomotor, all domains, that knowledge component, skill component, and everything. Let me tell you at the end, one of the best thing, that is what has been talking about is only creating employability, inculcation of a skill and a job market. All these things, all these developments are revolving around the economic development only. The most important part for which we are going to create the global citizens, the citizens, those who will be shouldering the responsibility in various fields and they will provide leadership to various fields, that aspect is lacking. How we are going to create it? That is inculcation of human values, democratic citizenship, right? Compliance to the human ethics and standards. These aspects have been grossly neglected, right? And if we want to look towards the future ready universities, if we want to look towards our students, to youth, to get ready to counter the challenges of future, so we need to also think about we must have a renewed commitment for inculcation of a proper value system, and all the higher education institutions, they need to also revise their curricula structure with elements of a value system. That is most important for humanity today. Of course, economic development, political development, other developments will follow, but developing human being also makes the most important thing. If you see all the charters of human rights charters or UN conventions, Geneva Convention, any convention you take up, or even Jack Dallar's report, and everywhere it has been mentioned that, even let me quote P.V. Indrasen. P.V. Indrasen, the former chairman of IIT Madras, he says, in IITs, what we train to our student is their only mind. We need to train their heart also, right? To make them good human beings. So to make the future ready youth, there is a dire need for holistic education development. That has been the inherent philosophy of Indian education system. So we need collaboration in this way only, and so many other factors are also there. We have very less time, so I just made a precise point. Thank you so much for giving me this time, and thanks a lot to ASSOCHAM, and thanks a lot to Dr. Prashant for inviting me to this forum, and Dr. Girish for nicely moderating this session. And thanks to my fellow panelists for really enriching me with some of the very, very scintillating points. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Thank you. I really liked your idea about a complete transformation about the curriculum of the higher education entities. And you rightly brought about that education should not only be about inculcating some employment traits in a student, but what is required are the soft skills, which are so much vast, ranging from leadership to what you said about compassion. Uh, Grateful for your inputs for this very useful topic. I will not take much of your time because we've all been delayed. So I wish to convey my heartfelt thanks and deep gratitude to all of you for taking your valuable time out to be with us today and provide such valuable insights into the intricate topic of international collaborations and the role of molding a future ready student. Wish you all a very safe and wonderful day, and many, many thanks from Manav Rachna Fraternity to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.